Hi there. This is a 1972 Sony Digimatic flip alarm clock. The model number on this one is 8FC-100E. Don't worry about the E too much, that just means it's a European model. Depending on which country you're in, that last letter will probably change. So, like I said, it's got a flip clock with an alarm, with a radio, AM/FM radio here. It's got an alarm as well. So I made this video because when I was looking to buy this clock, or when it was on its way, I knew it was down as broken, non-working, and I was trying to find some information on it. The YouTube video explaining like the internals, but I couldn't find a decent one anywhere, or even one explaining the functions. So I thought I would make one once it was all finished. So this is it. So on the top, we've got 5 buttons. That switches the alarm between the buzzer and the radio. This sets the alarm. You can have it on or off. This is the manual turn on button for the radio. So if you want to turn the radio on, you just press this. If you want to turn it off, you just press it again. And this one sets the radio between AM and FM. And this button, I haven't quite worked out what this is. It says pull sleep. It's like some kind of a sleep timer. I think you're meant to pull it up, and then over a space of time, say 10-15 minutes, it gradually lowers and drops and drops and drops, and then switches the radio off again.
Once you know it was set in.
Like a sleep timer,
And it
because
followed the lives of 4 women.
it gradually
Sarah
creeps
Jessica.
down itself and then switches off. So I think the idea was you just pull this up at night if you were, going off to sleep. You listen to the radio and it switches itself off in 15 minutes. It's the way they did things back then. It's that sort of age. So at the front, this here is the alarm time. Now that alarm time, there's a dial on the side here. Sorry, there's the side dial. The internal one sets the time and the external one sets the alarm time. So if you turn that, you see the alarm time. So that's set for 10 o'clock in the morning. I leave these set for morning times in case somehow the alarm gets set and it goes off at 10 at night or 1 in the morning. Right, so here, this is the analog flip clock display. It's 24 hours, so that's 7:02 in the morning, and it's backlit as most of these old flip clocks are. That's the little, it's like a little neon light inside. So at night it sort of gives a nice amber glow across the numbers. Now here you've got this thing that's moving. That's it's part of the flip clock. It's the piece that always spins on the flip clock. I mean, normally you wouldn't see it, but I guess the idea was it was because the clock is silent, and it was just an indication to let you know there was no problem with the clock, that it was still running even if it appeared to be doing nothing. So unlike a clock with a second hand, you can see it's running. This is like, it's just an indication that it's running. And at the end here we have the radio. That's the tuner there. So if we turn it on, there's a little backlight inside this drum that's green, and you might see it come on. There you can see it come on, and then it's just the tuner here, and then volume, got a volume button at the back there. So that turns that off. So what I'll do is now I'll flip the back off and I'll explain, the internals. So anyone looking to like restore this clock or like repair one, hasn't actually got one yet, it's got some idea of what to expect. I don't think I can tell you too much about the front. Well, you will find that on all the cases, it looks like there's a dent here and a dent here. they're not actually dints, and there's a, sorry, and like a dint there. They're not actually like dings, they're mouldings underneath, inside the case, that over time has just stretched the case slightly, so you can't get away from having them there. When I take the back off, you'll see the inside, where the little mounting pegs are that cause this. This clear display at the front, you can remove that, but it's glued in, so if you can get around not removing that to polish it, then that's probably the best way around it. Thankfully the Sony logo is printed on the inside, so you can polish this off as much as you like and not have to worry about damaging that typeface there. So I'm going to switch it off now, and then I'll come back once I've took the back off. Okay, so I've got the screws out the back casing out. That's them there. Right, I'll take the back panel off now. Don't get too frightened. Just don't forget this is sort of pre-silicon chip era. It's still just solid state. So this is the inside here. Basically that's your speaker, just there. So the way this works, well, basically the way it works is you've got your power supply comes in to down here, and then it splits. You've got a full voltage live to the flip clock mechanism. Now the flip clock is pretty independent from the rest of the circuit. This main circuit board here has the radio tuner dial attached at the front. So the tuner and the circuit board and the tuner dial, that's all one piece. Obviously you can see the tuner at the back here. So you've got your transformer, that knocks it down for the voltage for the radio. As I said, the clock, like nearly all flip clocks that I'm aware of, especially mains powered ones, they are usually the full live voltage. So you just got to bear that in mind if you're going to sort of start playing on with them. The only connection, the only wiring from the clock to the radio is a few wires here that are part of how the clock turns the radio on or turns the buzzer on. So for most of the time, the clock isn't like, the clock could easily run without the radio working, and vice versa, they're not integrated. You'll notice this here. That's just a connection I put in case I need to dismantle it again, because when this clock came, it was described as non-running. So that's probably why I've got it for a £5. But when it came, it was running. It was just very noisy. The flip clock mechanism, just very noisy, and that's not uncommon on a clock that's never been serviced. It's just a case of stripping the motor out and just dropping some oil in the right places. So, but I just took the chance just to clean the whole thing up at the same time. The only downside is you have to, there's about 8 or 9 wires. Obviously there's wires down here, and there's about 6 or 7 to the board that you have to solder off the board before you can get the board out. It's just kind of the way they did things back then. It's a pain, but it wasn't too hard. It's not hard to find the service manual for this clock online. I can't find a user manual anywhere, but the service manual seems to be no end of places hosting it, and there's full instructions in that service manual on how to, step by step on removing this and removing that, to literally pull the whole thing apart. It's very simple, straightforward. As I said, the only downside is you have to desolder a few of these wires and then solder them back on at the end. I soldered these ones on, they're just a small voltage off the transformer, but this is alive and it goes to the alarm from the clock. I just left that on because I had a feeling I might have to pull it apart. I'm going to see how it runs. It's running fine now, but long term I probably will go back in and solder that together, but for now it's just like that. And you probably just, if we look inside, you can see like that's just the alarm mechanism back here off the flip clock, and obviously this is the aerial, and so it's relatively straightforward inside. It's the soldering is really, it's really basic by modern standards, so there's plenty of space to get in there. It's not a problem. Desolder those wires, and if you want to give the clock a thorough cleaning, that's really the way to go. These buttons at the top, they don't feel like they pull off, but they do pull off. That one unscrews. The ones at the side just pull off, and if you want to lighten the case off, it's more than likely going to be quite yellowed. If you want to lighten that off, I use the peroxide cling film sunlight method that you'll find no end of explanations on how to do on the internet. So there you go. So if you can pick one of these clocks up relatively cheap, I would do, even if it says they're broken, and really easy to fix. The flip clock is not made by Sony. I don't think Sony ever actually manufactured their own. It's made by Koppel, which are a Japanese brand and probably the most common flip clock motor you're going to find. So it shouldn't be too difficult sourcing a replacement motor for one of those. It may or may not be. Don't quote me on that. They're usually quite easy to fix. It's just a case of cleaning them in the right area or lubricating them in the right area, and they usually come back to life. You're pretty unlucky to find a non-working flip clock that is totally non-working. In my experience, you can normally get them back. So there you go. If you like this, you can check out my Instagram channel, Solid State Vintage, where I post most of my recent pickups on there. And so there you go. Thanks for watching.